Hello, welcome to this new BMC Helix Remedyforce webinar. My name is Jair Ramos, and today we are going to review some of the best practices of using REST API. Remember that if you have any questions, please put those on the chat. We will answer those there. Let's review the agenda for today. First, we're going to check what is a REST API in Salesforce. Then I'm going to show you what is Workbench and how we are going to use it. Then we'll review some HTTP methods. And finally, I'm going to show you some of the differences between BMC Remedyforce REST API versus Salesforce REST API. Okay, so let's start. What is a REST API in Salesforce? REST API provides you a powerful, convenient, and simple REST-based web services interface for interacting with Salesforce. It is an excellent choice of technology for use with mobile application and web projects. We can do the following actions to records. We can create, we can read, update, or delete. So now let's move on to Workbench. Workbench is a powerful tool web-based suite of tools designed for administrators and developers to interact with Salesforce.com organizations via the Force.com APIs. So basically, this is a powerful tool that will help us to test all of our REST API calls. It is extremely easy to use, so we are going to use this one to test all the queries that we are going to do, and I'm going to show you how you can do that. So let's go to workbench.developerforce.com, and here we can select the environment between production and sandbox. In this case, I'm going to use my production org. Then we need to select the API version. We can leave the default API version. Let's click I agree and log in with Salesforce. Okay, I didn't put my credentials because I'm already logging into my org in the same browser. So here, as you can see, there are some tabs that you can navigate, so you can check all the things that this tool has. But in this case, we are gonna test all REST API calls. So in order to do that, we have to go to Utilities and then REST API Explorer. And here you will see some options that we are gonna review those. Those are HTTP methods. So let's check those pretty quick. So the client creates new instances by using POST requests. The details of an individual instance or list of instances are retrieved using GET requests. The client uses PUT requests to modify an instance object. When an instance object is no longer needed, the client uses a delete to request to remove the record. So here are the options. So some of them that I already mentioned, like get, post, put, and delete. So we're going to review those in a sec with some examples. So before the examples, let's quickly check the differences between BMC Helix Remedyforce REST API versus Salesforce REST API. BMC Remedyforce REST API populates only the fields which are mentioned in our documentation. For example, it will not populate the category field while creating an incident record. It is recommended to use the standard Salesforce REST API for creating records through REST API. So basically, there are some limitations if you are using the Remedyforce REST API. I'm going to show you some of them, and based on this, you will decide what is better for your organization if you want to go to Remedyforce REST API or Salesforce REST API. So let's go to the BMC documentation. So here you will find some of the things that I already explained to you about the HTTP methods. And we're going to skip this section because we won't use Postman. We are going to use Workbench to test our REST API calls. So let's move on to this section on the document. It says that we need a URL, which basically is the domain, and then some additional string that we need to include. This is an example, and then we need to add the action at the end, but let's work on some of them. And just to clarify, if you want to use Postman to test your REST API calls, you need to check the information that is here, because there are additional processes that you need to do if you want to use Postman. In this case, as I already mentioned, we are going to use Workbench to test our REST API calls. So take a note that you need to add the domain of your org. If you have my domain, you need to put the domain that you have, then the string that we need to add, following by the action at the end. There are some actions that we can create using Remedyforce REST API, and we're going to review some examples. But an important thing to say is the current available API version is 1.0. You need to replace instances of x.x in the table with the one in the URI when you call the REST services. So let's start building our URI. In this case, as you can see here, we need to add the domain. But as I'm using Workbench, it means that I'm already logging into my org, so I don't need to add my domain. If you are using another tool, probably you would need to use your domain. Let me add the additional string that we need to put in here. Okay, let me just delete this one and let me copy the one that we need, which is this one. Okay, let me copy it. Let's go back to Workbench and let's paste it here. Okay, so now that we have our base URL, the next thing that we need to do is to check which is the action that we need to perform. As you can see on this table, you will find all the available options that we have for the Remedyforce REST API. But I would like to start with one first, which is create an incident, and this is the most common REST API call that you might need. So as you can see, the description, this is to create a VMC Remedyforce incident, the URI, and if you also check the HTTP method is a post, so it means that we're gonna create a record. So let's take the URI and let's put it here. If you will remember on the node that we read before, we need to change this to 1.0, which is the available version, and then incident. Right now I did a get. As you can see, this is not allowed because we need to select post. We are gonna create an incident, and here you will find a sample of the record. So here is an example of the request body that we need to include on our REST API call. Just keep in mind that the fields that are listed here are the only ones that are available to use on the VMC Helix Remedyforce REST API. So if we want to add category, we won't be able to use that, just the fields that are listed here. So let's copy the information or the fields that are here, and then we will go to Workbench and paste the same values. So now let me just copy everything, including the curly brackets. Let's go here and let's just paste it here. So now the next thing that we need to do is to modify the IDs that we just copied to the ones that exist in our org. So let me go to users, and then let's pick up an active user just to get the ID. In this case, I'm gonna select the first user that I have in my org, and from the URL I'm gonna get the ID of this particular user. So now let's copy the ID, and now let's go to Workbench and let's exchange the ID. Let's click execute, and as you can see, the log is success through. We can see the ticket number and the ID of that particular incident. So here we can, with the incident ID, we can just copy it on the URL and it will take us to the actual incident. Okay, as you can see here, this is the incident that we just creating using a REST API call. Just to confirm this is the ticket number. If you could see, the username is Luke Adams, and also the description is the one that we just set. So now let's move on to another example. Let's check categories. So If we go to the category section, it is a get. So we'll get some information from our org. So as per the documentation, we need to change this to the available version, which is 1.0, and it's a get. Let's click execute, and here we will see all the results, which are all the categories that we have available in our org. If we click on each folder, we'll find more information. If it has a parent category, the ID of the particular category that we are looking, and basically that's all the information that we can get from the category REST API call. So let's take another example. Let's go to knowledge article and see all the information that we can get from a knowledge article. Here in the result, we can see all the different folders, which are all the knowledge articles that we have in our org. As you can see, you will get some information like title and some other information related to knowledge articles. As I already explained you, the BMC Helix Remedyforce REST API calls have some limitations. So we will just get a few fields. There are some specific actions that we can perform, and as you can see on the frequently asked questions, so it means that if we're creating an incident and we want to use other fields that are not description, open date, due date, and client ID fields, if we want to add the category field or any custom field that we have on the incident object, we need to use the Salesforce Platform REST API. The BMC Helix Remedyforce REST API won't help us to add more fields in case we need. So now let's move and let me show you the documentation that we have for the Salesforce REST API. So on this document, you will find how to create or update incidents in BMC Helix Remedyforce using the standard Salesforce REST API. So here you will find some of the use cases. You can use the Salesforce REST API to assign a template, using non-template option to populate the minimum important fields, custom fields or other fields that you have on the incident object if necessary, and also we can update an incident record. So on this section of document, if you're gonna use Postman, that's something that you need to follow, or if you want to create your web application or mobile application, this is something that you need to configure and install. In this case, we are using Workbench, so this is not needed for us right now, but you just need to keep in mind that you need to follow that process if you are using Postman or any other tool that is not Workbench. Here in this table, you will find some of the syntax that we will use in order to create our REST API calls. Here, let's take an example of creating an incident, just like the one that we did with the BMC Helix Remedyforce REST API. Here, the URL is going to be a little bit different. And as you can see at the end, it contains the API name of the object, which is BMC Service Desk Incident. And that's the one that we will use. So now let's copy the URL and let's paste it on the Workbench. Remember that we don't have to include the domain because we're using Workbench. Okay, let me just copy the URL, and just to test something, I'm gonna use a get just to see which is the information that I get when I perform this action. And as you can see, this is the API name of the object. Let's click get and execute. Okay, if you check, this is what we get the information for that specific object, which is BMC incident, and all the recent items. So these are some of the recent items that I have in my org. And now let me show you another thing that you can do using a get and the BMC incident object. So now let's go to the incidents tab to get the ID of a specific incident. Actually, let's take the one that we created. Let's take the ID and let's put it at the end of the URI. Okay, let's click execute. And here you will see all the information related to that particular incident. I mean, all the fields that belongs to the incident object, you will see it here. So now that we checked all the information that we can get from an incident, let's go back to the Salesforce REST API documentation and do a create. So now let's get the sample request body that we have on the document. Here you will see a couple of fields, but you can add more if you want. In this case, I'm gonna take the sample test body that is here, and let me just copy it here. Let me select post first. I'm gonna delete the ID for that specific incident that we use a get. Here on the request body, I'm gonna put the syntax that I copied from the document. So if you would like to add more fields to the request body, let me show you how you can do that. Let's go to setup, and then on the setup menu we have to go to objects, then select object manager, now on the quick find, let's type incident. Let's select the incident object, go to fields and relationships, and here in the second column you will see the field name, which is the API name of that particular field, and that's the one that you need to take if you want to add more fields to the request body. In this case, I'm gonna be just focused on the client and the template, because with the template we can add a lot of information and it will make us the life easier. You will see it. So, but we need to get the ID of the particular template that we want to put on our request body. So if we go to the menu and we try to search for template, in my case I don't see it here, so it means that the tab is not available for my profile, so I need to enable that. So let's go to setup, and then on the quick find, let's type tab, and let's click on tabs. Okay, so now let's click on new, and on the object pick list we need to find templates. Select templates and you select a tab style. It is up to you, it doesn't matter which one you select. Let's click next. In my case, I just want to make this available for my profile, so let me check my profile and change it to default on, and it will be default off for all the other profiles. And I'm gonna remove the tab for all the apps that I have. And now let me just refresh the page, and here on the menu, if I search for template again, I should be able to see it. So let's type template, select templates, and now we have the view to see all the templates that we have in our org. Let's change the view to all. As you can see here, this is the list of all the templates that you have set up on your org within the Remedyforce administration tab. But for this specific example, I would like to create a new template. So let's go to the Remedyforce administration tab. Let's go to the menu and type administration. Let's select Remedyforce administration, and here on the search, let's go to template. Let's click on new. The template will be for incident. Let's put any name. In this case, I'm gonna name it email. And here you can specify all the values that that specific ticket will contain. In this case, I'm gonna set up an urgency. Okay, let's select a value. In this case, I'm gonna use high. I'm gonna click add, and we can add more fields if you want. In this case, I'm gonna also put the impact. Let's click on the lookup, and I'm gonna select low, add. You can add more fields or more values if you need. Click save. And now the next thing that I need is to get the ID for this particular template that I created. So let's go back to templates, and on the recently view, I will find the one that we just created, and here from the URL I can take the ID. So let's replace that on the request body. The next thing that I need is the client ID. This is the same process that we follow with a previous example. We have to go to setup, on the quick find, go to users, and you can select any active user that you have in your org. In my case, I'm gonna select the same one I did for the previous example. Let's take the ID from the URL, and let's replace the value on the request body. Okay, in this case, I don't want to use the description. I just want to show you how you can create an incident with those simple fields. Let's click execute, and as you can see, the log says that it was success. It is giving me the ID. Okay, there are no errors. So let's take the ID and see the record that we created and see if it was created correctly. So let's go to the org and let's put the ID on the URL. It will take us to the incident that we just created, and we are going to review all the values that are there. Remember that we just put the client ID and also the impact and the urgency. Let's check if those values are there. So the client ID, it's okay, the template email, which is correct, the impact and the urgency. So it is working as expected. So templates will save you a lot of time if you are using the REST API. But as I already mentioned, if you want to do it manually, if you want to select a specific category and a specific urgency and impact, this is the syntax that you need to follow. If you don't want to use templates, you can put here any other field or any custom field that you have in your org and put the value there. And another process that we can do is to update an incident. Here on this document, you will find all the process that you need to do in order to update an incident. So this is a little bit more advanced. We'll review these examples in a future webinar related to REST API. Probably we'll use Postman and some other advanced options, but this is just to let you know that that's something that can be done. Something important to say that you can use 15 or 18 digits. Both values will work for the Salesforce REST API, and also BMC Service Desk is case sensitive, so make sure that you follow the same syntax. So now let's quickly do a couple of actions. So let's go to the org. There's something that I would like to show you. Probably That will be helpful for you if you want to work with other objects that are not listed on this document, but you can basically use any other object such as urgency. So let's take the API name of the field of the object, sorry, and let's just replace the value here. Let's click execute, and you will find all the recent items. In this case we just use high, so that's the reason we see it here, but you can add dash the ID of the value high, and you will see, or you will get more information about that specific record. So let's go to the org again. Let's select any other random object. In this case, let's select category and see the information that we could get. So let's copy the API name of the field and replace it on our URI. Let's click execute, and it is mostly the same thing. We will see our recent items, and if you click on the folder you will see the ID. We can add the ID on the URI to get more specific information. So REST API are a powerful tool if you want to work with a web-based project or a mobile application, or if you want to integrate a third-party application with Remedyforce or Salesforce. We also review how to use Workbench to test your REST API calls. We review the differences between the VMC, Helix, Remedyforce, and Salesforce REST API. So based on that, you will decide which one is going to be better for the project that you are working with. Also, I show you how you can create, update, and delete records using HTTP web methods. We will review more examples and more advanced queries or calls in a future webinar. Probably on that webinar we will use Postman, so you can see the difference between Workbench and Postman, so you can see different options to test your REST API calls. So this webinar is going to be available on our YouTube channel. Remember that if you have any question or issue, you can submit a case with technical support via web, phone, or email. Remember to follow us on all our social media on VMC communities, Facebook, and Twitter. Thank you for watching this VMC Helix Remedyforce webinar.